So speaking of fights and battles, a lot of people want to know what happened to Jesse from the Nelk Boys. So I know you guys are not huge fans of Nelk Boys. I've been watching Nelk Boys pretty much since they started. I think they had like 3,000 subscribers when I started watching them. Back in the day, this is maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, pranks were really big on YouTube. Remember, if you know, like Vitali, there was like Simple Pickup, there was Loft. I loved Loft. A lot of these guys doing these pranks. And these guys were Canadian. Nelk Boys were Canadian guys. And I noticed that they were like in Ontario doing stuff. And, I was watching their silly pranks. They were doing a lot of like pretending to be an employee at Walmart, pretending to be an employee at Starbucks. And they would find some of their fans, would give them their uniforms so that way they can go there and pull off some pranks. And it was originally started with 3 guys, but then one of the guys left very early on. He's now back as one of the other characters. But anyways, it was basically MTV Jesse and Kyle Forgard. Okay, and they continue to grow their channel, to millions of subscribers. I think they were at maybe 5 million subscribers, 4 million. And then they brought Steve Will Do It in, and I think Steve Will Do It is now a partner in Nelk Boys or Full Send, whatever you want to call it. And I was noticing as Steve got more involved that I noticed him sort of, I don't know what the word is, like pushing out or kind of maybe not being as polite to or not as loving towards Jesse. And I remember observing it while watching their videos, that thinking that I used to think that Steve was kind of an a-hole, and I was kind of noticing these just subtle little cues within their videos, which most people wouldn't notice. I'm very observant to people's behaviors and facial expressions or whatever. And I was noticing this. And then all of a sudden you start noticing that Jesse stopped showing up in the videos. And then all of a sudden they kind of mentioned that he left because they were doing a lot of partying and drinking, and he wanted to quit drinking. So he wanted to go do his own thing. So they said, okay, he's no longer part of the, on-camera crew, but he was managing all of their merch stuff. So he was doing all the design for their clothing and their drops. That was how the main way they were making money before, was through their Full Send clothing drops they would do every 3 months or so. And then not too long ago, just like a couple weeks ago, so back up. And then last year, Jesse took over. They had another YouTube channel that was just called youtube.com/fullsend. And Jesse started his own show there, which was, not connected to the Nelk Boy stuff, but it was on the Full Send channel, which Full Send is kind of their brand name they use. And he was doing the show. He called the show Shithole. It was weird. And I think it's a really weird name, actually. But then he's doing kind of skits, his own version of comedy, which he has a very loyal following to. You look at the comments on his videos, people love it, right? I think it's okay. It's good. I actually really admire his creativity and that sort of thing. So that was going on, and everyone's always questioning what happened to Jesse from the Nelk Boys. You see a lot of people asking this. They've mentioned it on the Full Send podcast, how they want to get Jesse on the podcast one day to kind of talk about it, whatever. They've never talked any shit about each other, right? So, it appears like, they just kind of were going their separate ways. But the thing is that I think Jesse owns a large portion of the Full Send brand and the business and so on. And the Nelk Boys have gone on to launch their own NFT. It's called MetaCard. They launched their own hard seltzer called Happy Dad. And now they just launched supplements.co, which is their supplement brand, right? So they're launching all these other businesses, doing all these other things. And Jesse seems not involved in that stuff. So just a few weeks ago, the Full Send channel got renamed to Sunday. Just Sunday. And that got more people leaving comments and questioning, why is this channel not called Full Send anymore? So I have a prediction. I think that Jesse and Kyle are probably going through court proceedings right now. That's why they're not talking about it. Both of them are just not mentioning anything about it, and to the point that it's weird. A lot of people are saying, hey, the fans deserve to know what's going on here, what happened, right? So that's what I think. It's just interesting to see that, you start a channel, it blows up. This happens a lot. I hear a lot of YouTubers talking about this, where they can't keep up the lifestyle of what it takes to continue making content, right? I hear this all aspects. I was just listening to an interview with Mr. Beast's manager, and they were talking about how much longer can Mr. Beast continue doing what he's doing, right? They're thinking maybe 5 to 7 more years, right? I know Graham Stephan was talking about this as well, where he was like, he doesn't necessarily want to keep making, personal finance videos for the rest of his life, right? So you get pigeonholed into this kind of community, right? So the Nelk boys are very much partying, drinking. Now they're really big into gambling. They're obviously got sponsorship with a company called Stake, and they're promoting the crap out of it. I'm sure they're making millions of dollars promoting online gambling, right? So just interesting, kind of seeing that dynamic and kind of like the kind of content you create creates your lifestyle, right? And then if you choose to change your lifestyle at some point, it could be very detrimental. So,
Well, I think the concept, the idea on the content side is pretty interesting. That last point you made, which is this idea of just like burnout that happens almost, or even burnout might be one piece of it. The other might just be like the useful lifespan of content and almost the fleeting nature of content, how disposable it is. Like we were just talking about how excited we are about creating content. I am still. So I say that at the same time, recognizing that like anything I put out there, I think when I first started, I thought, oh, this will last forever. But now I kind of see it slightly differently. I'm like, so much of this stuff is so disposable, at least to the audience. Like if I just stop posting anything, people would forget about me in like a few months, or you know what I mean? That would be that, and it would be fine. Like I'm not complaining. It's just the reality of the situation, because there's always so much new content. And it's just a very fascinating topic. It's like, where do you go once you're in that space and you're creating? Because there's a lot of content creators who have come and gone, gotten very big followings, and just kind of have shut down, don't do it anymore. I think that is particularly fascinating, because I don't know a ton about the Nelk boys and necessarily what's going on with them.
well, the Nelk boys also, like Kyle, they didn't want to do, I guess, as much prank, so they're trying to figure out what they're going to do later if they get sick of doing it. They started the Full Send podcast. When you have a podcast interview show, like, there's also H3H3. He started his podcast thing, right? There's a lot of people who go the podcast route. Even like Graham Stephan started the iced coffee hour, and so on. So it's like, that's one way they're branching out. They're also kind of starting these businesses. I predict the Nelk boys are going to sell Happy Dad, I'm guessing, for $1 billion within 5 years. That's been my prediction from the beginning. That's why they never called it Full Send Seltzer, because Full Send is part of their brand. Happy Dad is just like a random name, right? It's like, what is that, right? So they're just, building out these businesses they can later sell. But like, we kind of talked about this on the last episode, Yaro and I, about how when you're kind of sharing your ongoing story, like if let's say you're vlogging, you'll end up going out doing cool things because you need to. It's part of your content. So it can actually, like, for the right kind of, content creation, it can actually help like create a great lifestyle for you, right?
I was listening to Colin and Samir the other day, and they were talking about the life cycle of a creator and how, much like celebrity, there is a limelight you get to enjoy. It's a growth curve, and then that curve inevitably flows downward. It could be by choice. You just stop producing yourself. You take a break. I think we've seen this with everyone. Casey Neistat is maybe a recent example. Left and wouldn't leave, but stopped and came back. Emma Chamberlain, I hear a lot about. Not actually personally followed her career, but I heard that she was taking a break. I think back to one of the very first YouTube celebrities, Jenna Marbles. I remember her. I don't know if you guys think back to a long time ago. She had a little puppy dog or something that she would talk to and do this voice and thing like that. And she was huge audience.
Ray William Johnson from Equals 3. He used to like do viral video reviews and jokes and stuff. And he was huge. He was like the biggest YouTuber at one point. And then he just stopped because he got sick of it.
And that's the point. I think there's two things here. There's your career longevity. It's inevitable. I mean, I went through this too. I had my blog go through a rocket ship phase, and then a sort of a stagnant hibernating phase where you're still getting results, but you're no longer growing like crazy, to then a sort of slow falling down, mostly because I moved on to kind of not discard my blog, but to start another company. In this case, it was Inbox Done. So that business and the traffic of the blog just slowly dropped. So sometimes it's like that. It's a choice. But like hopefully a lot of creators now know to do, and you've mentioned many examples, you need to start other vehicles that are not dependent on you showing up on a YouTube video or writing a blog post. So I was smart. I had an email list from the early days, so that I still have, and that doesn't disappear if I stop writing blog posts. It does slowly disappear, but it's way more stable. Creating another company, like you said, starting a podcast, creating brands that are not your personal brand, all these things you can do. Sometimes, though, it's like just a continuation of you being creative in different ways in different platforms. But I mean, I think about who is the best example ever for longevity as a creator. And I think most people would think about Madonna probably is the best person who's ever reinvented herself.
Really? I don't know about that one. Okay.
Who else has been
Madonna? I don't know.
Who's been more consistently able to maintain their status as an elite in their space?
I think the Paul brothers. I would say
were the Paul brothers famous in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s? You know, it's like, no, they only just came along. Yeah, I'm talking about reinvention, changing style, you know, still being considered like, you know, Madonna came out and it was like Michael Jackson, Madonna. And then there was Britney Spears, but there was Britney Spears and Madonna. And then, you know, later on, she just was always, maybe in the last 10, 15 years, not so much. But for her, I can't think of any other, maybe Michael Jackson's the only other person who has done the same. Unfortunately, he died. And that's something that we all, as a creator, if you're the face, you have to accept that. So I think for the sake of your retirement and your ability to fund yourself long term, you have to come up with either make a lot of money and then take that money and do something smart with it, or spin off something else that makes a lot of money.
Yeah, that's it too though. When you know, because the content creator concept there too, maybe slightly more relatable to a lot of people listening too. You know, you mentioned YouTube. I think PewDiePie was the big one, right? I think he's still around. I don't know. I never watched it. I just kind of knew of him. Yeah, it's like when you have the limelight, it's like you just got to milk it as much as you can at that point in time.
Yeah, ride the wave.
This stuff doesn't last forever. Ride the wave, yeah. And it's like if you're able to milk it and get lots and lots of money, it's like good on you. Do what you got to do, you know. Or this maybe a strategic transition into products or a business or something else outside of yourself. But it's like that kind of smart. You have to do something with it because it is fleeting, or it'll burn you out, or you're just going to get tired of it, or just the trends change. And I also feel like almost now the trends change even faster than before. It's almost like it's
more fragmented.
The cycles are even shorter. Yeah. Yes, and more fragmented.
I think like I was just gonna say like Mr. Beast and Mr. Beast Burger. You know, it's smart for him to take his brand while it's at the top of, you know, the food chain, and then spin off a burger joint. Now, if you launch Mr. Beast Burger without there ever being a Mr. Beast YouTube channel, how well does it go? Probably not as well. Does it still succeed as a business? You know, hard to say. Burgers are good, maybe it does, but it's a competitive space, and you know, and I think that's a very typical characteristic for a creator, where they also get tired of being the face. Maybe they're getting older, their energy is dropping. You know, I was hearing about I can't remember the name of the YouTuber, but there's a YouTuber who was doing well, but then started doing like what they call where you eat as much food as you can videos. I don't know what that trend is called, gorging or something like that. You know, and
that sounds like a self-destructive.
Well, this is
niche.
exactly what happened. Go on. So he started this, and unfortunately / fortunately, as soon as he started doing gorging videos, his traffic went through the roof. But now he was trapped to this technique of growing his audience, and of course he got obese as a result. We got to find the name. I can't remember what it is, but you know, he's in terrible physical shape now. But to keep feeding the beast, not Mr. Beast, but the beast that is the YouTube algorithm, he's got to keep eating a lot of food, or give it up and try and find another angle. And that's hard when you've tasted millions of visitors or millions of views to a video.
It's like something out of a sequel to Seven.
Right.
It's like, oh, you got the fame now, you got to keep going. Yikes.
I think there's a delay, Yaro. That's why when we're talking, there's a little bit of delay. But yeah, it's important when you start a YouTube channel, I think it's not to rely on the ad revenue, but to use it as a vehicle to grow an audience for a business, but not rely on the content to be the business. I think that's the key for starting a YouTube channel.
Yeah.